Hey kids, so the Lion King, huh? What's Mr. Kundell thinking? Sometimes I don't even know. I love that clip from the Lion King. I saw the cartoon movie and I saw the play with my entire family, and now this new movie is just amazing what they're able to do with computers, isn't it? But why would I include that movie? Jimmy, I know I'm talking about the Lion King here, but every time you brush up against that table, the whole camera is waving back and forth here. So, Jimmy, come over here. Jimmy wants to say hi. We're talking about the Lion King, and that's his favorite subject, right? You being a good boy? Hmm? Yeah, you are the Lion King around here. All right, I'm going to put him down because I'm teaching Jimmy. Come on, I'm on the clock here, okay, man? Cut me some slack. All right. So anyway, Lion King. Today's theme for chapter 16 of Sarny is going to be love, life, and loss. Okay, love, life, and loss. Kind of alliterative, isn't it? You know, the repetition of the L. I think, you know, after chapter 15, with Stanley's murder, okay, Sarny had a lot to process and a lot of emotions that were very complicated. We've all dealt with feelings of love, life, and loss. And I think of all of them, loss is the one that is the most challenging. And the Lion King, that clip, I think Simba asks a very innocent question about eating the antelope. We eat the antelope, don't we? You know, and the father's answer is pretty profound about how when we die, we become the grass, and then the antelope eats the grass, and you get this different context about dealing with the inevitability of loss. And in the Lion King, they call that the circle of life, right? And there's even a song. Actually, you know what? I'm going to play that song at the very end of this video. If you like that song, it's really, really cool. But you know, the circle of life, and it's hard for us as human beings to deal with the grief and the sadness of loss, and it's going to be really hard for Sarny, having gone through this experience first with Martin, her first husband, I guess you could say, then with Dealey, and now again with Stanley. When we love and lose people that we're so close to, it's hard to understand the why and the how, and it's hard to process. So there's lots of things that people can turn to help them with their grief. Many people have their faith, and that can be so comforting. And I think also we have our philosophies. We have our understanding of the universe and how we all fit into that divine structure, right? And for me, I think that clip in The Lion King is incredibly instructive and helpful. We, to see the joy in life, have to find some way to step back and appreciate that loss is just a part of that cycle. It's sad, and we have to find some positive way to process it, to get through it, and to come out on the other side. And I think that's the most important part of this chapter today, because once again, we will be dealing with love, life, and loss in chapter 16. So let me, before I continue waffling on here, let me get my spectacles. Jimmy's left. I think I've bored him to tears here. Sorry about that, kids. It's a complicated topic, and I guess this new format is a bit easier on me because if we were back in school, I'd have to do this lesson 5 times a day. And that's tricky. So just doing it once is hard enough. So let's get back into the book, and let's see how Sarny deals with the tragic loss of her husband Stanley. Chapter 16. Miss Laura, she took care of everything. I couldn't make my brain work. All I knew was Stanley, he was dead, and it was my fault. And I couldn't get my thinking past that. Miss Laura, she set the funeral and bought the coffin and found the minister in the hearse and the above-ground burial vault. They can't bury them in the ground because the water is too high. And I walked behind the coffin with Tyler and little Dealey. Remember, guys, New Orleans is, technically underwater, so all the burials have to be above ground. That's what Sarny meant. I couldn't think on anything. The minister, he said some nice things about Stanley, and there must have been 200 people show up. Almost all black, but some white too. Stanley was well liked, the minister said. If it is the measure of a man that God will like him as his neighbors do, then Stanley will be with our Heavenly Father waiting for us. Later at Miss Laura's, I thought on quitting and told her so. No, you won't, not now. And she had such a fire in her eye that it scared me. Before all this, you might have quit, but now you can't stop the school. But they're still there. That Haggerty, he's still around. All of them are. They'll just come back. They'll just keep coming back and burning it down. Well, we'll do it differently. We'll move around. Not give them a place to burn. But you can't stop now. Not after what they've done. As to Haggerty, he won't be there long. What do you mean? Even though there were other men involved, he was clearly responsible for Stanley's death. We'll have him arrested and punished for it. You mean the police? Of course. It's a lynching, a murder. He's a criminal and must be punished. The police don't help us. You forget who I am. Among other things, I am a very close friend of the chief of police and most of the judges. I think we won't be seeing much of Haggerty for a time. Was as good as her word. I don't know what she had on men, what kind of hold. But the police, they came to the market and arrested Haggerty right in front of everybody and took him to jail. Gave him a trial and had it fixed some way because the jury, they came back with guilty for manslaughter and he went to prison. Whole thing didn't take but 2 weeks. So, Haggerty's trial, we would have to say, is not an example of what we would consider being actual justice, because justice is a very complicated process, and Haggerty is a criminal, but he deserves due process like anybody who goes to a trial, and that's not what he received. Miss Laura had it fixed. So I would have to say that this is much more indicative of poetic justice. The fact that Miss Laura used her influence with the judge and the chief of police and perhaps even the jury, and the outcome of the trial was sort of a foregone conclusion, essentially. But Haggerty met with justice that way. Wasn't as good as hanging him, and it didn't bring Stanley back, but it was something. And after it was over, Miss Laura, she had a party for the judge and the attorneys for both sides, and I helped Bartlett to serve. I knew who they were, but they didn't know me, and Miss Laura, she didn't tell them that I was Stanley's wife until after they'd had some to drink. Then she introduced me, told them I was Stanley's widow, and that they had done a wonderful job of upholding justice. They all puffed up and clapped for me and then went right back to drinking and watching Miss Laura talk and move. When she was there, men couldn't see much else, and I worked until the party was over and then went home, and for a week slept in the same room as little Dealey and Tyler. Just couldn't be alone. There for a space, time didn't matter. I know it passed, and I know I lived, and I know we did things, but I can't remember on them. Everything was in a blue fog, and I didn't care for much. So this depression that Sarny's feeling, her grief and mourning over the loss of Stanley, to the point where she's incapable of even moving. Loss can be so overwhelming for us, and it's so difficult for us to make sense of in any sort of a way. And we can see, sorry, loud garbage truck moving by. Give it a second. So we can see that this is a phase that Sarny's going through, and it's a cathartic one. It's an emotional release, but it's one that's just a phase. It's one that we have to understand. These are very real feelings. We have to respect them, but we also have to find a way to see the light at the end of that very dark tunnel, right? The school took care of itself. Enough knew how to read and figure numbers that they could pass it on, and they went to people's homes to hold class. Went to different places each week, sometimes more than one at the same time, and just kept it going, like Miss Laura said, moving it around. I didn't have much to do with it. No matter what they did, they couldn't stop it now. Dealey cried some and grieved after Stanley, but not as bad as Tyler. It like to broke him at first, and then made him hard, like he had a place inside where he could never be hurt again. And that's very sad. The injustice of what happened to Stanley. I guess on some level all of us feel injustice when we experience loss. It's not fair, but what happened to Stanley, you know, was a whole order of magnitude above that in terms of injustice. And unfortunately, Tyler, it's changing his personality to where, to a certain extent, he's a little bit becoming like Dally was in The Outsiders, and when Dally dealt with the pain of life and the injustice in life, he basically decided that he had to be tough and hard, never show any feelings of love or compassion, and all that closed down in Dally, and could never see the beauty in the world. He just sort of had to protect himself from a world that he felt was so painful and so horrible and cruel, right? And we're seeing a little bit of that in Stanley, and I'm sorry, not in Stanley, in Tyler. And if you'll indulge me just for a second, I want to play a clip of The Outsiders. This is after Johnny dies. He leaves a letter for Ponyboy, and we hear Johnny's narration of that letter, and he references Dally and the fact that if we allow loss and pain to make us no longer experience the joy of life, we lose one of the most valuable experiences. We forget how to live, how to experience joy, and how to experience the beauty of the cycle of life, the circle of life, right? So I'll play that clip for you right now, okay?
Ponyboy, I asked the nurse to give you this book so you could finish it. It's worth saving those little kids. Their lives are worth more than mine. They have more to live for. Tell Dally I think it's worth it. I'm gonna miss you guys. I've been thinking about it in that poem, that guy that wrote it. He meant you're gold when you're a kid, like green. When you're a kid, everything's new. Dawn. Like the way you dig sunsets, Pony, that's gold. Keep it that way. It's a good way to be. I want you to ask Dally to look at one. I don't think he's ever seen a sunset. There's still lots of good in the world. Tell Dally I don't think he knows. Your buddy, Johnny.
So that clip reminds us, you know, Johnny's tragically short life. He learned such an important lesson. Life is dealing with love and loss, and in this case, he knew he was going to be leaving this earth. And his philosophy was wise above and beyond his years. The sunset. There's beauty that when we understand that all of us, our time on this earth is brief, even in the most, even if we live to our ripest old age, our time on this planet is brief. And we can't grieve forever. It's a phase, it's a process, and we have to get back to experiencing the beauty of that sunset of our life. And when Simba talks about the sun, on how it illuminates every aspect of our kingdom, it's our life, and it's our choice to live it in a way that brings us joy and happiness. And that's a very sad thing for Tyler that he sort of lost that. Okay, we worked at Miss Laura's and went home and back to work, but everything seemed flat, and it must have been 8 months or more like that, just living, not caring much. One morning I went to Miss Laura's and brought her coffee and breakfast, and her face, it was all gray, only color to match it, just gray. What's the matter? I'm not feeling well, not well at all. Would you send Bartlett for Dr. Hiram, please? And you can take the breakfast away. I won't be eating this morning. I'm sorry for the bother. Bartlett must have run all the way because the doctor was there in 15 minutes. I'd never, not once, seen Miss Laura sick. Even her monthlies didn't seem to bother her. For her to send for a doctor, I knew it was bad. And he was in her bedroom a long time, and when he came out, he looked at me. She wants you. And I thought, didn't look good. Voice too short, face too serious. She wants you. I went in, and she was sitting up in bed, face still gray, voice weak. Tired, but more sunken. Her voice had gone down inside her. Sarny, I need you to do more than you're accustomed to doing for a time. What's the matter? My heart has failed. The doctor says I'm going to die. No. Didn't say it, but thought it hard. No, you can't die. You can't. I won't let you. You're too young to have a bad heart. I am 51 years old, she sighed, spoke even weaker. Apparently, that is old enough. The doctor assured me there is no hope. So this is, from a long time ago when 51 was getting on in years. Nowadays it's middle age, right? Modern science has many ways of dealing with heart ailments, but back then there really wasn't. But we see a huge connection here with the outsiders, don't we? Johnny knew he was going to die. And in that context, his sense of freedom It completely changed. What are my choices? What am I going to do with the time that I have left? What is of meaning to me, and what is the value of my life at this point? And I think you're going to see huge connections here between Johnny's tragic death and Miss Laura, but even more so with Miss Laura. As I read the next pages, consider how she uses her freedom and choice even in managing the terms of her own passing. She couldn't be that old. I thought maybe 38, less. I started in crying. Been crying a lot lately, and this just made it worse. Can't be. You were just fine yesterday. You can't be fine one day and die in the next. Has to be some time there. More time. We need more time. Sarny, I need you to be strong. There is a lot that needs doing, and there isn't much time. I must depend on you to do it. How long does the doctor say? She took a breath. Days, not over a week, and there is much to do. Bartlett can help. Bartlett won't be able to handle this. He will fall apart. You have always been the strong one, and I need your strength now. Will you help me? Anything. And I meant it too. Would have died for this woman. Right now, instead of her, I'd die. Take me, not her. Just tell me what to do. First, we must discuss business. I do not have a family, and I have amassed a considerable sum. I wish to leave some of it to Bartlett so he'll be comfortable the remainder of his life. The rest, I'm leaving to you. Me? I've got my own money, more than I'll ever need. We will do as I say. Strength there, weak voice, but strong inside, and I shut my mouth. Good. Now get a paper and a pen, and I will tell you whom to contact. You must get busy right away. Bartlett can run errands for you and take messages. Let's not tell him just yet, all right? Now get the paper. I went in to the table on the corner and took a pen and dipped it in the ink. Ready. She listed names of men and names of companies. 3 different lawyers to contact and bring immediately. And I wrote as fast as I could. Put the notes in envelopes and addressed them by name when they were done. Sometimes she had to stop, so I'd catch up, but then we'd go again. After an hour, she stopped. All right, get Bartlett busy and let me rest for a few minutes. I'd like a cup of beef broth if you have some extract and some hot tea. I sent Bartlett off on the errands without telling him about Miss Laura. He didn't ask about the doctor, and the errands just seemed normal to him, and he left. Made a tray up with flowers stolen from the courtyard below, hot tea and beef broth both, and some cold vegetable soup in case she wanted a bit more. She was sleeping when I came back in the room, and I started to close the door, but her eyes opened. I didn't mean to wake you. I will get more sleep than I want soon enough. Now on to the next thing, my final party. You're gonna have a party feeling like this? Oh, not exactly. I mean my funeral. I want it to be awake. I want to be there, and I want to be wearing that deep purple dress that makes my hair look so nice. You tell the undertaker to dress me in that. And not too much makeup. I hate that pancake batter look they often do on bodies. I was writing again. I didn't want to miss anything, do anything wrong. You call Williams' mortuary for the body. Couldn't believe she's just talking about her own self that way, just as calm and cool as the river. The body, not me or I, but the body. I want that clarion orchestra to play music at the party. And I want to be near the piano with the top half of the coffin open. She took a sip of the broth. They say the dead can still hear music for a time, and I want to see if that's so. Now to the guest list. How are you going to know if they come? Couldn't help it. Thought of just the three of us sitting alone, nobody there. Oh, they'll come, don't worry. Most of them owe me money. They'll owe you now, and they'll want to keep me and hence you happy. They'll all come. She listed over 40 names, all men. Some I knew, most I knew, some I did not. Bartlett has all of their addresses. Just tell him we're having a party. What day? Hated to ask, but had to say something. Ah, yes, there is that, isn't there? She frowned. It's so hard to know. Let's make it a week from today. And if it happens sooner, don't say it, I thought. Don't talk about saving the body for the party. I can't stand that. Just don't talk on it. Make it a week, she said again. That should do it. Oh, I want an old-fashioned New Orleans funeral. I want a band in front of a parade procession leading me to the cemetery and playing while I'm interred, all right? Whatever you want, that's what it will be. Good. Now get started while I consider the menu for the party, and you may want to run home and tell little Dealey and Tyler that you'll need to sleep here for a time, if that's all right. I'll send Bartlett. Didn't say it, but I didn't want to leave. He can tell them that I have to work. Isn't it amazing how Miss Laura is making so many choices about her passing, her funeral? These are difficult choices. These are choices that none of us ever want to make. We know we will one day. We all understand that our lives are brief. But clearly for Miss Laura, she wishes to die as she lived, in control, free to choose for herself. We didn't have long to wait before the lawyers started coming. All three came at the same time, and I had to wait while she spoke to them one at a time in her bedroom. They all said they were sad, and I think they meant it. One of them cried. The third one she talked to was the man that did her will, a man named Brune. She'd already put me in it without telling me, so there wasn't anything to change, but she wanted to make sure that Bartlett was settled right. He will receive $100 a month for life, Brune told her. I thought, $100 a month? Twice what a man made working, almost 3 times. Must have more money than me, and I had a pile. What with not spending wages and tips, I'd saved exactly $2,409.65. Enough to live for 6-7 years without working, should I get that old. Couldn't think on more money than that. What would you do with it? She rested for an hour when the lawyers were done, and by the end of that day, most everything was ready. I brought my blanket in and put it on the floor that night and started to sleep there, but she stopped me. Please, Sarny, sleep on the bed, will you? Next to me? I have some fear. So I did, and was next to her just at dawn the next morning when she passed. I was awake, thinking on coffee and breakfast, wondering should I do it, just lying still next to her, hearing her breathe. And I looked over in the weak light coming through the window. The sun wasn't up yet, but starting to get close, and her eyes were open. She was looking at me, and she took my hand and said, "Oh, Sarny, I did so like beautiful things." And she died. Closed her eyes And her breathing stopped, and I thought, no, God, not yet. But he took her. And I thought bad on him for a minute, but he still took her. Felt like I'd lost another Dealey, another Martin, another Stanley. Thought my heart was already broken from the others, but it wasn't. Broke again, just broke. And I laid there crying next to her, holding her still hand, smelling the lilac in her hair, wishing I hadn't had to see so damn much misery, and feeling some sorry for my own self, and wishing I could slide time backwards and have it not happen. Didn't matter. He took her anyway. And that's the end of chapter 16. So, Miss Laura's passing is, of course, very emotional and very sad, and particularly after chapter 15, with Stanley's death. And I think Sarny is now emotionally pretty vulnerable. She's really, this has really crushed her. And we'll see how she responds to Miss Laura's passing in chapter 17. But again, kids, our theme for today is love, life, and loss. And of course, the grief that Sarny is feeling is because of her love. And again, I want to remind you, we make this connection with The Outsiders, and Dally, he did not know how to love. Life had taught him not to love. I mean, certainly we could make the argument that the one character that he did love was Johnny, but other than that. And when Johnny died, do you remember what Dally's response was in The Outsiders, and how he responded, how he reacted to Johnny's death, particularly after Johnny died, by doing that loving gesture, that selfless gesture of going into a burning church and saving children that he didn't even know. So we remember that Dally essentially committed suicide. The police shot him, but he arranged that. That was all orchestrated by him. He didn't want to live in a world where a character like Johnny, who was so good and so virtuous, could receive such poetic injustice, right? Such a hard thought to process. Why is it in this world that bad things happen to good people every day and there's no explanation? And, it's a hard question. It's one that we face all the time, sadly. And now Sarny is having to process that same thought. Miss Laura was kind, loving, and generous, and Sarny loved her deeply. And now she's experiencing, that's life, but now she's experiencing the loss. And if we're going to love deeply, we have to know how to grieve, but then we also have to learn how to recover, to embrace life, and how to live with joy and happiness and hope and positivity. From my own experience, kids, there are things that loss that I've had to deal with in my life that's been very difficult, and I know we all can relate to that. That's a universal emotion. When my grandmother had passed, I was with her a few nights before. We had a snowstorm here on Long Island, and she was mostly sleeping, and I was visiting her in the nursing home, and it was the last time I saw her. It's a very powerful memory for me, and it's one that I will I will carry the rest of my life with great joy. She woke up, and I told her I was leaving, and she knew I'd been sitting there for a while. I was actually grading essays quite a bit. And she reached over, and she touched my face, and she smiled, and she told me that she loved me. That was the last thing she ever said to me. And in that one transcendental moment, I understood what it was all about. I understood that when we grieve for those that we love, in a way, we're kind of grieving for ourselves, because we know the inevitability that we one day will pass as well. And we have to find some way to accept that, and to not let it take away the most important part of living, right? In that one gesture, my grandmother left me with that idea, and I'm so grateful to her. I miss her, and I love her. But you know, I'm still very happy to be here with my family, with my students, with my friends, and to still find joy and tremendous meaning in every breath that I take. So with that being said, I want to invite somebody very special into our classroom today, and that's Miss Skolnick. Miss Skolnick and I have been teaching together for 23 years. She's one of my dearest friends. She's my partner, my collaborator, and an extraordinary teacher and human being. And she was gracious enough to make a little video. She teaches the same literature that I do, and I told her that I would be reading this scene today and trying to deal with all of these very complicated emotions, and she very graciously offered to help me out. So here's Miss Skolnick speaking to you about this chapter.
Hello, Mr. Kundell students. Under very different circumstances, this week would have been our spring vacation. And like many people, I had my suitcase packed and my passport ready for a long-awaited trip overseas. Here's my passport. Here's my suitcase, and sitting alone in the hallway. For the last couple of weeks, we've been sheltering at home, and in this very strange and unnatural confinement, we've had to redefine what freedom means when we're so restricted from doing the things we love, enjoying special places with the people who are so important to us. We're all in this together. Some say we are all alone together. I look at my suitcase, sitting here in my hallway, and I'm reminded that freedom can also be found through the choices I make in my mind. In chapter 16 of Sarny, Miss Laura dies. And because we too cared about her so much, valued what she gave to Sarny, we too, as readers, we mourn her loss. Just like Sarny, we can come to understand that we can choose the wisdom of beauty. We can choose the wisdom of our faith, the wisdom of our optimism. Even in dark times of profound loss and grief and sadness and in fear. Similarly, in Milkweed, Janina's father, Mr. Milgram, tells Misha and Janina that happiness is something we find inside, and even he points to where his heart is, our heart and our mind. This is what he tells them. And we should never forget how to be happy. This is priceless wisdom for us. Misha and Janina struggled to survive in the Warsaw Ghetto. They lost the freedom they had once as children. Janina's birthday party is a reminder of those happy moments. Janina appears with a red bow in her hair and her party dress and her black patent leather shoes and the birthday cake with all the beautiful candles on it. At the same time, in the early 1940s, Anne Frank was a teenage girl living in Amsterdam with all the impulses and dreams of a young girl, going to parties with her friends, riding her bicycle along the canals, invested in her schoolwork, preparing for her future. But in 1942, her father devised a plan to save his family from the Nazis. Her true story, much like the fictional story of Misha and Janina, is heart-wrenching. We don't know the details of Anne Frank's short life when the Nazis took her and the people in the attic to the concentration camp, but we do know through her diary about her heroic dignity during the 2 years she was hiding in the attic. Anne received the diary from her father as a birthday present in an attempt to help her face the loss of her freedom. He told her these sage words: "There are no walls, there are no bolts, no locks that anyone can put on your mind," and inspired her to look at freedom differently. This was also Gary Paulson's message about the power of our mind to create a new reality. To make the choice to use our mental freedom as a place of self-discovery and to transform loss and grief into wisdom. And this is essentially what Sarny did throughout the novel. In truth, I'm still looking at my suitcase and my passport mournfully, but I'm trying to redefine freedom. I'm trying to use my mind to imagine a time when I'll use my passport again, I'll dream a new dream and pursue another path of freedom. If I could sing, I would sing Cat Stevens' song to you right now, but instead, I'll recite his lyrics. Oh, very young, what will you leave us in this time? There'll never be a better chance to change your mind. And if you want to see this world a better day, will you carry the words of love with you? So be well, stay strong, and see you soon.
Oh, very young, what will you leave us this time? You're only dancing on this earth for a short while. And though your dreams may toss and turn you now, they will vanish away like your daddy's best jeans, denim blue, fading up to the sky. And though you want them to last forever, you know you never will. You know you never will. And the patches make the goodbye harder still. Oh, very young, what will you leave us this time? There'll never be a better chance to change your mind. And if you want this world to see better days, will you carry the words of love with you? Will you ride the great white bird into heaven? And though you want to last forever, you know you never will. You know you never will. Goodbye makes the journey harder still. What will you leave us this time? You're only dancing on this earth for a short while. Oh, very young, what will you leave us this time?
So I'm going to leave this video with the song from The Lion King, The Circle of Life. We talk about positive philosophies. I can't think of a more positive way to end this video. So as always, kids, I say to you, you know, be well, be safe, be positive. Great time to say I love you to the people in your life that you love the most. And, you know, as always, you know, no more handshakes, but everybody, we can dab.